So I've just finished our weekly school masterclass, which we run every single week, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Bali time, which is 12 p.m. UK, 7 a.m. Eastern time. And if you want to make parts of your business related to market research, offer creation, customer avatar creation, much more streamlined and automated, instead of having to do voice of customer research online and spend hours and hours and hours do that, then this masterclass replay will be for you. It's going to go into it now, so enjoy watching it. And by the way, if you want to join our school community, there's a link down below in the description, so go ahead and click that and you'll be granted access to our community to join next week's masterclass. Thank you very much. See you soon.
We're going to do a bootcamp style process on this masterclass. And the reason that Amy and I, we sat down and we really had a chat about how can we keep the community valuable, relevant for you guys, obviously providing, value in line with the original reason we created this, which was to help you create specific results in your business. So a lot of those results will be sales and marketing, so revenue generating, results around things like content, whether that's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, things to do with sales, fulfillment, things to do with market research, which is what we're going to do today, and really just leveraging AI to create specific results in your business, as opposed to just using some new flashy tool for the sake of it. So with that in mind, we went back to, well, everyone in the community more or less is building a business of some kind. Every business has core components that they need in order to function effectively and in order to start generating revenue and then growing. And all of those functions, whether it's market research, whether it's offer creation, product creation, whether it's sales, marketing, whether it's fulfillment, delivery, and then in back end is like finance, accounting, and all sorts of other bits and bobs. But whatever the business is, it needs those things, and those parts, those things, those stages of the business building process, all of them can leverage AI, and all of them can use an approach which I talk about a lot in this community, which is number one, if you automate shit, you just get 10 times more shit. And off the back of that, the hybrid workflows approach, very, very crucial. Okay, so every stage of the business building process, there's obviously a human can do it, and then AI can come in and actually take over parts of that, do a lot of the heavy lifting, the grunt work, the admin work, and that kind of thing. So with that in mind, this bootcamp format is about going through the business building stages, starting from the very start, and then all the way through to winning your first clients and delivering whatever the product, offer, solution is that your business is offering. Okay, so this week we are going to go through the first stage, which is market research. It is researching your customer avatar, or ICP, ideal client profile, and then offer creation. And we're going to distill down really what's happening at the core of this process, because it sounds like, I mean, obviously a lot of you guys I know will have done processes before related to market research and customer avatar and offer creation and so on. But I think it's quite important to really reflect on there's really one thing that's happening at the core of all of this. And if you can stay focused on the fact that there's really just one thing happening, it becomes a lot more straightforward to start figuring out, well, how can I use AI throughout this process to help me complete these steps effectively, do good research, not just any trash that ChatGPT has fed you off a bad prompt, because you can't build a business if you've got poor quality of information in the very first stage, which is researching your customer, developing your offer. Okay, so how can you use AI to create good outputs to support you with this? Good research, develop a good customer avatar. And a lot of that, again, comes from understanding the human workflow. What is it that we actually need to be boiling down, getting to the bottom of? And if we can get clear on that, then we can get AI to help us get to that. But we need to know what that is first before we can use AI to get to that. Okay, so let's begin. And then I have some workflows to run through with you guys to support the process. So let me ask, I'm going to ask this first of all as a question for you guys, and this isn't right or wrong. I'm just keen to hear your perspectives. But I know, well, I'm pretty sure probably all three of you guys have done market research, customer avatar work before. So what would you say, in your opinions, would be the core, what's the core of the information that you're trying to get to and understand as part of this process? What would you guys say? Anyone got any thoughts? John.
Yeah. It's interesting you asked that question right now
Yeah.
because I've got Gemini, I've got Notebook LM open,
Mhm.
which I've only really just discovered in the last few days. But obviously it's got an exceedingly large brain, and
This is true.
I've got a document. So over the last few months, I've been interviewing a lot of successful graduates, right? And they're not, I don't think there's any, well, with the exception of Melissa Robinson, I
Mm.
don't think any of them are affiliates for Launch You.
Okay.
So there's Brigitte Zinko, she started her own online gym. There's Mike Jakes, who is now doing the attendance allowance thing with his wife,
Hmm.
Lisa, for old age pensioners in the UK. There's Mike Bramall, who's set the choirs up. There's a bunch of other, but I can't remember all the people. But so so what I've got is I've got a Claude. So I've got a Claude generated pre-interview and then interview questionnaire.
Hmm.
So there's like a brief sort of 30-minute interview where I ask 4 or 5 questions to get enough background for Claude to then generate like a 20 odd question deep dive into that individual, right? Which is recorded, and I get the transcript from Zoom from the recording, and I feed that back, and it gives me and Claude gives me two documents. It gives me the success story, the narrative, right? And have you heard of Eugene Schwartz,
Hmm.
Breakthrough Advertising? Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I've got that book, and so I use the 5 stages of awareness,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of people get market sophistication muddled up with the 5 stages of awareness. They're different things.
Mm.
You can be unaware, but in a very sophisticated marketplace, people have heard it all before, right? So what I get then is an analysis of it's we call it a Schwartz identification analysis, is what the document is called.
Mm.
And so I've got a huge deep dive into men, women, various backgrounds, various businesses, and what AI is brilliant at, obviously, is synthesizing all of that data
Hmm.
and coming up with the themes. Okay, there'll be, there are themes. I refuse to settle.
Uh-huh.
It might be one. Okay, or the desired outcomes, the
Hmm.
the pains, all of that. So I, the question, what do we need to know? I mean, I've sort of gone as deep as I think it's possible to go with the psychology
Mm.
of these people in order to. I mean, obviously the purpose of this is so that we can communicate in a way that resonates, engages, and converts. That's I'm focused on becoming a top tier marketer,
Hmm.
and I think this is the sort of trail that I need to be on. I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yes, brilliant. So I'm gonna thank you, John. I'm gonna use what you've just said there as a baseline to iterate a few points because I think you've hit on some very important things. So, number one, you've mentioned let's say Eugene Schwartz and a methodology, the sophisticated the 5 stages of customer awareness as a model to begin to understand your target market. So if we take AI out of the equation for a second and we look at what would we need to understand or what actions would we need to perform, what things would we need to research in order to collect the right information and really get a clear picture of our customer? What would we need to do? And if you can then break those things down into bite-sized chunks, let's call them individual context pieces, what that enables you to do is get clear on the human process and then therefore start substituting AI in to actually produce quality outputs, quality information. So John, using your example, we have, let's say, a high quality framework and methodology through which to, let's say, review our customer, right? Number one. We also want to understand, you mentioned pains and problems, correct. So that is really understanding voice of customer. What are they frustrated with? Okay, that's another thing. Pains, problems, results. What do they want? Because if you think of what's the entire reason that we're building any business, it has to be to solve a specific problem for a specific market. If we're not doing that, the business has no business existing. It doesn't help anyone. Okay, so with that in mind, you go voice of customer. So what do customers want? I don't know why I'm counting like this. Let's count like this. Voice of customer, and basically how to understand your customer well. That's two things. Now, in addition to that, pains and problems and so on and so forth, and the voice of customer, if we're then going to be creating offers for that market, we need to understand other things like where do they go online, to try and solve these pains and problems. So that's where you get into like keyword research. That's where you get into, forums and things like that. And if you can then start to tie these things together, we can create little workflows or even just manual prompts to gather information and then use that information as context within a bigger workflow in order to do the market research part of this process. So I'll give you an example. If you're doing market research, voice of customer market research, a tedious part of the process usually is to go online, like forums, go and Reddit, do the ask the questions wheel thing. I forget the name of it. Answer the questions or
Answer the public. Yeah,
answer the public. Something like that. Yeah, that thing. Go through keyword research data, look for search volumes, just really, research several different sources in order to find out what are people actually typing. So that immediately is one thing that you're like, right, I can use AI to perform voice of customer research, find out what people are saying related to this problem. Now, in order to do that, we probably want to give it some kind of context around what market are we trying to serve. So what are the important things that we need to know about the market in question? So we need to perform some kind of deep dive market research document, and then we need to use that to guide where should we be looking for voice of customer research. From that, we're then like, okay, well, now we want to build a customer avatar profile, or an ICP, an ideal client profile. And to do that, we need to know what pains, problems, frustrations are people having. That's the voice of customer stuff. What other, options do they have within the market to solve these problems? What isn't there? What could, what struggles have they faced while trying to solve these problems, and all the other things that form a customer avatar document. And in order to create a good customer avatar document, again, you probably want to give AI the right context in order to know how to create a good customer avatar profile. Okay. So again, if I've thrown a few things out there, but if we link it back to the human workflow, you're breaking it down into what is it that you need to know, need to learn, and need to understand in order to do this effectively. So if we were like, we need to create a customer avatar profile. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Okay, well, you need to learn. Where would you learn? Well, I'd probably research online, go on YouTube, whatever. Okay, cool. We can do the same thing for AI. We can teach AI how to perform good customer avatar research. That's one thing. And then it performs the customer avatar research. That's another thing. And that's after what we've already said, performing research online to understand the market, performing research online to understand voice of customer, to get to pains, problems, frustrations. So each of those is a bite-sized chunk that we can get AI to do. And then we can use those chunks as context later in the process.
Can I just say something as
Sure.
well? I don't know whether I think you hinted at this, but there's so I've got the VOC. So yeah, it'd be brilliant to automate this. I mean, I did it manually,
Mm.
but it's gone off and it's gone to Quora and Reddit and whatever, and
Yeah.
it's even rated the quotes. I mean, anything over an 8 is rated as nuclear. Right. Right, which I thought was pretty cool.
Nice.
So you don't need to use the low grade quotes. It will, if you ask it to go find nuclear quotes, it will do that.
Yeah.
But there was something else that I found really interesting. And this, I need to know how to automate all this because I'm just doing it manually.
Yeah.
But my AI calls it SERP, search engine results page, and what it's actually coming up. This is the amazing thing I've been totally gobsmacked by
Mm.
is when it I think when it understands when you've got this avatar. I've got two versions of each avatar. I've got
Mm.
the deep dive blueprint, which is about 80 pages long
Yeah.
on a Google document, and then I've got the PAS, the something avatar summary. Yeah, the something avatar. So it's just a summary. So that one's only about 20 or 30 pages long, right? But what it does, what it can do is it can find gaps that you can own,
Hmm.
keywords that you can own. So it will find keywords that are underutilized where there's enough volume,
Mm.
where there's nothing appearing, there are no blogs or articles or ads or whatever appearing. And it might be some hybrid sort of avatar that hasn't struck people as, worth going after.
Mm.
So that I've found has been a very important part, Dan, as well, is that research. But yeah, what you're talking about is taking it obviously to the next level.
Yeah, and so that's again a really good example of one part of your process creating, that document that if you could learn how to, number one, make that a repeatable process in a workflow so that when you do it next time, because you will, you don't have to then just go, oh, I'm going to rewrite the prompt from scratch and do it all again just from, from going through exactly the same process that you've already gone through. Because again, if we can put that prompt and that process that you did into a workflow, and next time you can just change the data at the front end and then just run the whole thing again without it taking you any time at all. Um, the second thing as well is now that you have those documents are gold to feed in as context to AI that might want to do other things. For example, one of the next stages is offer creation. When you're creating an offer, you're creating that offer in line with solving the pains and problems that the customers are saying that they have. So if you can then, when you're asking, Claude or whatever, to come up with offer ideas, well, the first thing that we want to do is just be able to feed it context of the customer avatar, because that research that you performed online, that is telling you the information you need to know in order to create compelling offers that resonate with that market, because they're like, this is a problem that I have. And you know that because you researched it online and they said that that's a problem they have. So the context is important. So here's what I'm getting to. And this is if there's one lesson to take away from this particular masterclass, this is the lesson. Any time that you're putting a lot of time and energy into creating a really good prompt to produce a valuable output. So in this example, a customer avatar document, right? A good quality customer avatar document. Anytime that you're crafting a prompt to produce this output, that is something that you can put into a workflow so that you can run it as many times as you want, as many times as you want to do this research now or in the future. And also, the output that you produce, if you put that into a sub workflow, which I'll just run through again as a reminder of how to do that. But if you put that into a sub workflow, then any other workflow that you create in the future can call that sub workflow to gather the context that it needs. So I'm going to run through a live example again of doing this, using this. I might turn off this camera tracking thing sometimes. It puts me as like a little head on the screen. But hey, we'll figure it out. So yeah, so a sub workflow, it means anytime a future agent needs to call it as context, you have it ready right there to use every single time. So I've now, over the last couple of weeks, I've created a bunch of different sub workflows for two businesses. So one is Betches, Amy's LA service-based business, and another one is a project that I'm working on at the moment called Crayon Construct, which is launching cost estimation, is providing cost estimation solutions to construction companies. I have a business partner I'm working with now on that. I'll maybe give a bit more context on that as we're going through the workflows, but I'll use that as an example. And being able to do this market research process for Crayon Construct using workflows instead of manually doing these prompts has saved me a ton of time. And then also all of the sub workflows that I've created, I'm constantly using as context into other agents and other workflows. So for example, today, I'll show you in a minute, but today I created a bunch of very good infographics that are going into a PDF that I've also finished today for my target market. And that the infographics were created by an agent that was fed context of the market research, the customer avatar document, the ICP, same thing, customer avatar ICP document, and branding guidelines, and a final brief summary of like my, all of the research that I did. So it was fed those 4 sub workflows as context. Then it wrote the prompts for the infographics. Then it generated the infographics. And so now that workflow, anytime I want infographics, it's just there. I'm like, okay, I need infographics for something. Here's a workflow that already can gather all the context it needs and then create really good infographics for that business. It's just done. Really easy. So let me show you. Where's my share screen gone? There it is. It's not green anymore. Okay, let's try that. I'm probably going to need to enable permissions actually, because this will be the first time that I'm doing it on this MacBook. Open system settings. Yep. Okay. Oh, it wants me to quit Zoom. We're not going to do that. Ooh, let me try that again. Can I do it? Oh, I can do it without quitting, I think. I hope. All right, so the main workflow, the one that I've just been talking about, and I'll share this with you guys if you're watching the recording, or obviously for you guys live on the call. When I post the recording of this, it'll be in the file section down below in the recording. All right, so I'll give you this workflow. And there's a couple of bits that are customizable. Before I upload it, I'll add a couple of sticky notes with guidelines on what bits to change. It's literally only going to be like this bit here. But what you essentially do is you just set the initial data. So what target market do you want to go for? What's the geographic focus? What's a one-liner of your UVP, your unique value proposition? What's your product description? Again, you can generate these from your website. Just have AI scrape your website and then generate these fields if you want, or you can just write it. Target business revenue. So that might be like, for the Crayon Construct version, not the Betches version of this, I was targeting 1 to 10 million per year. So just put that in there. Employees would be 5 to 50 for Crayon Construct, 5 to 50 employees. And then 2 things that are very important. In fact, sorry, there's many things that are very important. There's one main thing that's very important here. I'll go on to the other bits in a minute. This here, research folder ID, this relates to a Google Drive folder. Now, when you start creating multiple workflows, sub workflows, and so on, something that will make your life a million times easier is having a clear Google Drive folder structure within which to both save and access this information. So, for example, for Crayon Construct, within a market research Google Drive folder, I have all of the documents that I've created using this workflow that I'm showing you right now. And this is 4 documents for, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's right. 4 documents for 4 different markets. I think I've got 1 or 2 extra, but Yeah, it's like 4 different markets, 4 documents. And so what that means, or what the point of this is when you're running these workflows, if you have one master folder ID, in this case, this is the folder for market research for this company, and you can structure a workflow where every time your workflow checks where to put or access information, it's just using the same Google Drive folder ID that's designated for this. That will save you a ton of time. Top tip: don't make a folder called n8n workflows, because what will happen is when you run this for a few different things a few different times and everything's jumbled in the same n8n workflows folder or n8n folder, you're not going to know what's where, what anything is, and so on. Structure it in terms of the business or project that you're working on is the master level. The next level is then the part of the business that you're working on. So have a folder for sales, have a folder for market research, have a folder for marketing, have a folder for legal, have a folder for finance. And what will happen then is within these folders, you might have, like, within the marketing folder, you might have LinkedIn content. So I've got a LinkedIn content in a bunch of my marketing folders. You might have Instagram content. And so it's always structured by business department and then sub-department of business department. The point of this is that whenever you're working on the part of your business that this is to do with, the folder will always make sense. You're like, I'm building an Instagram marketing workflow. Well, where's that going to live? Well, that's going to live in the Instagram folder within my marketing folder within the name of the business that I'm working on. Okay, so always structure it like that, because it's just going to be really obvious and really easy to keep track of what goes where. Okay, so when I give you the guys this workflow, you will literally just have to change the first data. You will have to, might want to change the research prompts. This is written for Betches Walking Betches. There is this version here, which I'll hook up, is a more standard generic prompt that will pull in your information you put in the first step. So it will be like, look for this target market that was in the first set node, look for this product or service that you put in the first set node, look for the research based on the UVP that you put in the first set node. So the point, don't worry too much. I know this looks a little overwhelming. The point, though, is that you literally just put in this first information in the first node and then run the workflow. The only other thing that you would need to set up is to hook up your own credentials. So that would be, I'll explain Perplexity in a minute, but Perplexity credentials, if you're using Perplexity, Perplexity is, in my opinion, probably the best internet AI. So AI that goes and finds information on the internet. That's what it was originally designed for. Claude is pretty good if you're doing it manually, but if you're doing stuff in workflows, Perplexity is the AI to use. And then the only other thing that you need to set up will be your Google credentials. So saving the information you gather automatically as Google Docs in your Google Drive folder. And also if you use Open Router, which I've talked about on previous masterclasses, for your AI agent nodes and your basic LLM nodes, these guys here, you need to set up your Open Router credential. Now, for each of these things, remember the top tip always, just go on YouTube, and if you're stuck and you don't know, just go how to set up Open Router in n8n, or how to set up Perplexity API in n8n. And there'll be like a 5 to 10 minute walkthrough video that will show you how to do it. Each one is just a little bite-sized chunk. So this one, that one there, that's the same one. And then Google Docs. So how to set up Google Doc API in n8n, for example. So that'll be a YouTube walkthrough video if you want to do that. So what this workflow then does, and this is, John, relevant to what you were talking about earlier, each of these AI agents is essentially replacing the point where you would manually prompt your LLM with all the prompts to go and do the customer avatar research. So this prompt here in this guy, I'll open it up for you. It's the system prompt down here. So this is essentially a simple prompt where we're asking it to write out the target market research brief using the information in your input prompt. Do not hallucinate, and then output your response into a container called research doc. So what is the information in the input prompt? Let's have a look. So this information here is a combination of what was put in that very first set node, so all of your initial info, and what Perplexity managed to find online in the node before. Okay, so we're using Perplexity to gather really good quality context, and then we're feeding that context into this agent that is then going to use that context to construct an initial market research doc. So this is essentially replacing, again, what you would be doing if you were just writing a prompt to Claude. You'd be saying, go research online, look at these kind of websites, find me voice of customer research, go do this research in this target market, blah, blah, blah. We're basically just doing it the same thing, but inside a workflow. And that means that next time I want to run it, which I've now done multiple times, I don't have to do this manually with Claude every single time. I just run the workflow and then it produces the research. Is that making some kind of sense so far? John, I'll ask you because you are there and unmuted.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it sort of makes sense at an intellectual level. At a practical level, that's an whole other, I've not done anything like this, so I'm just easing my way in, Dan.
Sure. One baby step at a time. And look, I'll be upfront with you. It is a learning curve. And when you're doing this for the first time or first few times, let's say you're building a workflow and you're like, okay, I'm going to try and do this thing in order to replace a prompt that I'm doing in Claude. The first few times you will be very tempted to go, oh, this is taking me so much longer. I might as well just go on Claude and do it manually. Okay, it's going to take you a lot longer the first time, but once you speed up and you get over the hump and you invest the time into learning, there will come a tipping point very soon where it's actually going to start to not take more time, and then very quickly it's going to start to save you a shitload of time. So it's just that initial friction. And that's really, honestly, that's where most people will probably be like, fuck it. This is not worth the time. I'm just going to stick to Claude. In the long run, it's definitely going to serve you more. And look, I get it. It can be frustrating at the start. And I'm going to give you a bit of advice on this as well, because what we're looking at here looks quite complicated. This is a multi-step workflow that's generating multiple docs. The next one is the ICP document after the research document. The next one is an offers document. So it's creating 10 offers using all of the context it's generated in the ones before. And then the final one is it's generating a brief of all of the last 3 that it's done. And then it's saving all of that to that Google Drive folder that we talked about. Now, it's a little bit complicated, but here would be a great starting point. So this will be actually not just for you, John, but like anyone doing this. Here's a good starting point. Do it manually on Claude as you would do for the first time. Generate the document manually as you have done already. That document is now an asset. And so the best way to start using that asset, let me just save that and come out, is then to feed it into or put it into a sub workflow that you can then call with other workflows. And then those workflows might be very simple, like an image generation workflow where you're like, I want to generate Instagram content for my business. And it might just be like, hey, generate some content ideas using the sub workflow that I've attached to gather context and then come up with 10 content ideas. A very simple application. It's like one tiny little workflow. But what that means is that you don't need to keep manually typing that on Claude and keep feeding in your customer avatar doc every single time that you do it to, try and make sure it actually creates good content. Well, now the customer avatar doc lives in a baby workflow. So anytime you want to feed any workflow, like an Instagram content generation workflow, anytime you want to feed it context about who are you targeting, you now have a workflow designated to that you can call on. So the way that looks, I'll show you this one here. This is a sub workflow for my ideal client profile. Very little, that's all it is. And so all it's saying is when this is executed by another workflow, create a session ID. John, you remember this one? We talked about it before. So an agent always needs a session ID. So we're just saying create a session ID. And then all this agent does is it receives an instruction from the other workflow. So let's say another workflow is an Instagram content workflow. Within that workflow, I'd say, hey, call your customer avatar workflow and ask it to return you a clear summary of our customer avatar focusing on pains and problems. So that might be the instruction we put in the master workflow. And so what this workflow does is it then listens for the instruction that it gets sent by another workflow, which is in the user prompt here. And then when it gets that instruction, it looks in its system prompt, and all this is the document, the customer avatar document. Okay, I've literally just copied and pasted the document into this agent. And so essentially this agent is the document, and it just has the ability to access and read the document and then provide relevant information to whatever agent called it in the first place. So the way that looks, I'll show you a practical application. I'll just publish that again. So I did this today, actually. So this was generating infographics. And what I did was, instead of manually doing this process again on Claude or Gemini or whatever, and trying to feed it all the right context and so on, what I did was I wrote the prompt in a workflow. So you are a master prompt writer for design using Nano Banana. Your task is to use your tools in the order specified to gather context and then generate, and this is a number that's in the first step. So this would be like 5 prompts or 10 prompts that will be passed to Nano Banana to generate images. Whenever you call a tool, you will pass through 2 containers. One will be instruction and the other will be session ID. Wait until you have received responses from all tools before writing your prompt. So what I've done is I've given it access to the little sub workflows that I showed you. So one is the ideal client profile sub workflow. One is a brief, which is an overview of our full market research, and then our offer creation, and then our customer profile. So it's a brief. One is the research doc, and then one is our branding guidelines. And that branding guidelines workflow is so simple. It's literally, here's our hex color codes, here's the fonts, and here's a little elevator pitch of what we do. Super simple, but it just means anytime I want another agent to understand what our brand styles are, it just calls this little baby agent and says, what are the brand styles for this business? And it's just there all the time whenever it's needed. And so what this agent does, it gathers this context from these little baby workflows that I've now created and just are there in my workspace all the time, finds the context, and then it writes the prompts for Nano Banana. So what then happens? Well, once it's created those prompts, and I can show you some examples of the output, so we can see them. Maybe move Fathom out of the way. There we go. So it's just writing a prompt 1, prompt 2, prompt 3 for Nano Banana on Gemini. And then the next step in the workflow is it just sends all 5 of those prompts into a Nano Banana image generation workflow. And then the output, I'll show you a couple of examples here. So this is one example. It's to do with avoidable financial leakage in mid-sized construction, small and SMBs, small and medium businesses. These are stats that are in my actual customer avatar documents and my research documents. It's pulled relevant metrics, stats, and information related to customer pains and problems. It's pulled them through, wrote the prompts to Nano Banana to generate these images, and these images are in the brand styles as well. So that is my primary hex red color code. All right. Sorry, my primary red hex code color. Like these ones here. Yeah, this one's not as good. And a couple of them I needed to do some slight edits on. This one was good. I really like this one. Hidden risks of Excel spreadsheet dependency in construction management. This is a big pain problem that we're solving. Really good infographic there that is generated. And this one here, again, like so. This highlights a big problem to do with scope creep and to do with other unforeseen costs that come into higher revenue construction projects. So these infographics, all of them have been generated again because the agent had the right context from all of the sub workflows that I created by simply uploading the documents that I'd already done into these workflows that can then be called by other agents. So I'll give you a final example. Now that I had those infographics created, I was then able to create this PDF like so, using those infographics, have content generated related to those infographics. And then this is going to be a lead magnet essentially for construction businesses. And it saved me a bunch of time, whole load of time, because now I've got, again, all of those sub workflows, all of those context resources ready to access whenever I need them. Makes life a lot easier.
All right, so I hope you found that valuable, and I hope you got a few key takeaways about how you can use workflows to begin to streamline and automate these little bite-sized chunks, these little parts of your business process. So if you got value, be sure to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And if you'd like to join our school community, there's a link down below. It's free, no charge. And that way you can hop on these masterclasses, just like John, just like Dennis, just like Ian, who were there this week, and have any questions covered. And also go through this firsthand, learn with us firsthand. So thanks very much. Enjoy, and click down below to join our community. See you next week. Bye for now.